Hey family, welcome to Family People. I'm Raymond, and today we're going to be looking at the painting item that seems to be rocking the miniature painting world at the moment, which is of course the makeup sponge. So my intent is to use this specific item to assist me in creating this particular style, which is the comic book style, looking to retain the very dark recesses, and one of the tips I saw was actually to run the sponge under a tap and get it to absorb some of that water, and this is just demonstrating that size difference that you get from that effect. So this is the reference card that we'll be using to guide our paint scheme. It's really basic. We're going to start off with quite a dark grey to give that initial coat of highlighting, using the sponge over the black undercoat. There we go. So here is the first of our miniatures. Now, one thing I do notice is, or comment on, is I didn't squeeze out a lot of moisture. You'll see this in a moment. So actually what I noticed in this first application is, because there is so much wet still in the sponge, it really is quite a sloppy job, that very first coat. So I've learned that for next time. And you'll also see there in the background my wet palette where I've applied the paint and I'm dabbing it up from. It really does disappear ridiculously fast into the sponge. So I'm cautious and conscious the amount of paint that gets used in this process. But yeah, here you go, you can see me with a kitchen towel just trying to soak up more of that moisture, give it a good squeeze, and you can see how wet that kitchen towel is. That's the amount of moisture that's come out still that I'd left in there. So yeah, lesson learned for future. And this is, as I say, it's my first time using these sponges. So moving up to a lighter grey now, so building up on that initial base layer. So it's just that comparison side by side. So again, applied it to the wet palette, and I think having less water in the sponge means it's maybe not quite as much getting absorbed. And I'm probably still trying to balance, right, at this stage, the level of pressure to apply. I do like the effect of using the sponge and find it's I don't know if I'd say easier than dry brush. I think certainly it's less chalky than dry brush, and I think that's one of the key things with wetting the sponge, is it helps to apply the paint without that chalkiness residue that often you would get when you're dry brushing and you wick away the paint, particularly if you're using something like a kitchen towel, and you find that your paint gets the moisture gets too absorbed. So I think definitely sponges are better for that. And now we're moving up to white scar. So again, you can see there's that colour increase now from that light grey to that much starker white. And again, you can't really see it's there on the wet palette, I can assure you. But yeah, try to keep that in the background so you get an idea of how I'm applying the paint to the sponge, as well as how I'm applying then the paint from the sponge to the miniature. Now at this point, I think I've worked out the key to using the sponges really is very, very light pressure. I've sped up all of these videos that you're seeing here by ×2, and a few of the later ones by ×4, but these ones ×2, and it really is the gentleness that has to be applied when using the sponge, and I don't think I'd even mastered it at this point as much. I think that comes later on in the second SpongeChop application. But yeah, but you can see the key principle I was trying to achieve at this stage is to try and retain more of that black undercoat to sort of give it more of that comic style effect. And yeah, give me your ideas at the end whether that actually managed to retain enough of that black or not. Okay, so we're going to start with the base paints now. So we are using speedpaints 2.0 from the Army Painter range. So I've just applied some here in a palette. Now I haven't watered this down, and again it's something I have seen a number of people reference online, that they do water the they mix it down with medium. I haven't done that, so yeah, these coats will be going on quite heavy. I might try and thin, there you go, better than water down. I might try and thin the paints in my next attempt. I think I'm very conscious, however, the amount of time it takes. So it gives you a nice dark green on those leaves there, and now moving on to the red slaughter for the head of the carnivorous plant. Try and keep everything in shot, and yeah, apologies, camera sometimes is in focus and sometimes doesn't want to play ball. Wonders of technology. Now I think at first I was starting to maybe try and avoid painting over the black, and then I very quickly gave up on that, yeah, particularly with this specific miniature. The detail, there's a lot of detail, but it's not particularly clear what that detail is. I think it's fair to say. So yeah, so I just figured, right, okay, we'll just slap it on, and obviously I'm going to do I'm going to do another layer of SpongeChop white over the top, which we'll come to shortly. So yeah, that will then re-pick up some of that detail, but it does mean we have lost the black lining. I did deliberate, do I go back in later and do the black lining? I haven't done. We'll see. Let me know in your comments what you think in terms of the final outcome effect. And then finally, now the last of our colours, certainly for the base coat, moving on to the brown. And again, it's just double speed, but you can imagine there's a lot there's a lot to cover here, right? But again, the beauty of speed paints is they're in their nature, they're quick to apply, so the only challenge is trying not to get paint over what's already been painted. I figured if I bled from either the red or the green, then because the brown is that much darker, it'll quite happily just sit over whatever else has been painted. So that was my choice there. Generally with speed paints, you would work from the lightest colour down to the darkest colour. It's not forgiving if you go over areas, so you do have to have a level of caution when applying the paints. It is very much still about that careful application to the right areas. And I know we refer to all this kind of styles as slap chop and what have you, but yeah, it does still require just a bit of carefulness in its application. But even at this stage, going to the end now, the brown, I mean, it's quite a nice miniature, and certainly could leave it there, and I think that, you know, that would look good on a tabletop. There you go. So there's the final, when it's all dried, that's what it looks like with the base coats applied over the initial SpongeChop. So now we get our sponge. Now you see I've taken out a lot more water that time, and certainly when you apply the moisture, it really does expand quite a bit in size, as I showed you earlier. Yeah, I was quite amazed, and I mentioned it to my wife, and my daughters were like, "Oh yeah, duh," because they obviously use these things day in, day out. Thanks, girls. So you can see now, and again, you can see what I'm trying to be that bit more careful. And as you saw there, I've stepped up now for the AK intensive white. The idea trying to really bring up the colour levels in this next coat. and yeah, just trying to be that little bit more gentle in the application, because really it doesn't, and you can see certainly on the top there, for example, on the plant, the detail compared to on the side of the sort of the tree bark, the detail is nowhere near as deep, which means you have to be that bit more gentle to try and touch the miniature enough with the sponge to get that, the highlight apply, without losing that detail. So now that's dried, we're going to go in with the brighter colours now, and again this is all SpeedPaints 2.0. And initially I'm just going to literally just slap this all over. There's only a few leaves on the miniature, so that's quite nice. A quick job with the green, and there's a good level of detail on these leaves, right? So they're quite nice to, yeah, to kind of pick out and utilize as part of this process. And what I do realize then at this point, just as I'm finishing off, just making sure all areas of green are covered, that that center piece on the leaf, actually I want to leave that. So just as I applied there, I thought, actually I want to really wick that out, because I want to retain as much as I can that original darkness in the center of the leaf. So that's why I'm just going back now and effectively removing sort of paint. That's some of the advantage, of course, with using the speed paints, is they are that much wetter, and they do retain that moisture for that bit longer. So you can see there, just being able to go in and remove some of that. So now moving on to Carmine Dragon, the brilliant pinkish red. So again, just highlighting more on the head of the carnivorous plant. And again, not being so bothered at this stage on where that's applying, we're just covering the previous coat. But again, this is where I think definitely having that thinner coat application would come into its own, and I think I do go back in again and just remove some of the heaviness of this, right? Because the point isn't to completely cover the previous coat, we're wanting to add that highlight to that previous coat. So there we go. So this is now, we're going back in with a bit more moisture, a bit more water, and trying to get something of a balance between, if I remove too much, it's white that shows through. I don't want the white to show through, but I do want pink to come through. And now moving on to the ruddy fur. So this is again the highlights over the bark. And I've tried to focus this on the next stage, up higher up on the miniature, yeah. So you can see the lower areas I've left without that second layer of SpongeChop, so they haven't got that extra heightening of the colouring, but rather the upper areas of the miniature, so it helps to continually draw the eye back to the main focus, which of course the upper parts of the miniature. And just helps to add that extra layer of brightness, right? And just lift it that little bit. And yeah, other than avoiding the other colours that have already been painted on, it really is that is the primary piece of this task, really. Otherwise it's a very simple application. I've loved using contrast paints, and just started my very first time actually using speed paints, but yeah, very much operate as I would expect and have come to know and love with the original Games Workshop Citadel contrast paints. There we go. So there's that final there, and again, yeah, it's perfectly good at that stage to leave like that on the tabletop, but I've decided to carry on and apply some highlights to some of those areas, and then for some of them I have then actually gone back in and applied some further shading just to bring down those highlights back in, just to kind of merge them back in. So you'll see with these highlights I am applying them quite readily, quite thickly, I guess, in terms of their brushness, their boldness on the miniature. So I do go back in with the shades just to try and bring that down a bit. Again, I'm not using thinned coats, these are straight out of the pot, so again maybe that was part of that in that process. I've just thinned it down enough for the application. And this is 4 times the speed trying to get this this video on here. So yeah, I'm really trying to actually take my time a lot more with these, and it's the area I know I'm still the weakest in my painting journey, right? Trying to apply really thin lines and detailed painting. It's the area I definitely need the most practice in. So I like to do this because it challenges me, right? It's an area I know I'm weak, and therefore want to expose myself to. More apologies for the off-screen. Trying to get myself in a position where I can see what I'm doing, and then trying to also get every now and then also just keep checking on the camera where are we at on the camera. So apologies. But yeah, trying to capture some of those highlights on the top of the head of the plant. As I mentioned, they do get lost a lot in translation. It's not really detailed, but there is enough there to apply to those highlights. And now I'm going to go back in with the crimson shade and bring down some of that stuff, and this almost kind of does lend itself back to some of that black lining. Obviously it's not black, it's that deep red, but it just helps carry off some more of that detail that we're wanting to retain in the plant, give it that bit more depth. I'm about to double speed here, just this application now. Yeah, and I'm quite happy for it to pull in those darker recesses. As I say, it's just only adding rather than detracting from the final result that we want. Big so the main part, I've left the bright pink, the vibrant pink. You know, I'm happy with the colouring, and I think it is a good reflection of the graphic that's been provided by the original artist. Now we're going into green over the plant. So this is again just really very much on the edges. Again, this is 4 times the speed for the application of these highlights. I really am trying to be careful and slow in my application. Don't need to bore you with that. But yeah, trying to capture some of that kind of the gradientness of, I don't think that's a word, is it? Gradientness? How the green gradients from the center of the leaf being quite dark, moving out to the edge of the leaf being much lighter. Apologies, try and get my words working for me, that'd be good. But yeah, I quite like how it's come out. I quite like the end result on that on the leaves. I think that's a really nice level of transition between the deeper, darker recesses of the original blacks, and obviously where that's then been covered up with the darker green, the lighter green, and now those highlights. Yeah, and I did notice there was that kind of strange area, and I was like, no, is that leaves or is that tree? And I couldn't quite work out, so I went for it being tree. And then we're going on quite a lighter brown actually over the tree. Again, just really trying to focus on bringing out some more of those highlights on the bark. Again, just trying to be a bit careful here. So again, this is 4 times the speed. Just trying to capture that. And you can see I'm using all the different various techniques here, trying to use the edge of the brush, trying to use the tip of the brush, trying to capture as much as I can and not lose too much in the recesses. There are areas where it does get a bit thin again, similar to the tops of the plant heads. And my thinning down of these paints is purely just to get a smoother application. I'm not thinning down the paint to thin the paint, if that makes sense. So yeah, so some of these ones now, they're not, although they are straight out of the pot, I have thinned them a little bit just to ease the application for getting the actual paint off of the brush and onto the miniature, but by no means thinned them enough that they're going to run everywhere. Yeah, so I don't want them in the recesses. I want them very much on top of. And just trying to think, where would the light naturally hit? In areas that are in shadow, I'm not going to focus on those areas, and they will sit as they are. Okay, that's that application. And again, this one I do go in with the strong skin shade. I've got some weird music playing in the background. It's not from me, it's someone out on the street. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that picked up on the mic, but there you go. It sounded really weird. Okay, so yeah, so just going in here, and again, just very liberally applying that shade. Oh, you get a bonus one. There you go. That's my editing for you. So yeah, I mean, I've recorded, there are 4 of these, and I did record the painting of all 4, and then I tried to pick the elements that were the most in focus, so you at least get to see what's happening. Yeah, cut off the ones where I'm just literally wildly off the screen. You just see my hand moving around. Oh, thanks for that. Oh, an extra third. There you go. So yeah, when it comes to applying the shade, it is very liberal. The only thing you're trying to do is avoid painting over the areas that are not that colour, obviously. So yeah, nice and quick, and just brings that down that little bit. And you can see this is all dried now, so I'm going in now with the final highlights, and apologies because I didn't share the paint I used there. Let me just grab that one. So I'm using here from the Citadel range the layer paint Dawn Yellow. I think there is an equivalent in the AK Interactive range. Oh, dropped my mic. Which is Ice Yellow. I think they're very, very close to one another in terms of their actual colouring. So yeah, that's what I've used here. This is for the teeth, as you can see. And again, it was just, I just found this really awkward. It's just not very clear. The graphics are beautiful, lots of really wonky spine teeth, but unfortunately it didn't quite translate in the miniature, so I've tried to kind of pick them out as best as I can. And then of course everyone's most boring job in the world, doing the base. Actually, there's not much detail on the base. I could have absolutely spent more time and effort painting up that detail, but I'm going to, because of the amount of miniatures and just trying to compress down the box size, I have grabbed myself a copy of the STL files from Tinkerpaws, so I will be 3D printing their insert in order to store this in my collection, and that will help crunch down the number of boxes. So there you go. So that is all 4 of the carnivorous plants. Hopefully you can see the final effect. Did I achieve the comic style? Is there enough of that original darkness in there to represent that inking? or did it all just get lost in translation? Let me know your thoughts, let me know your comments. Do you think that works? I think as individual miniatures, I think they look great. I'm really happy with them. I think they look very, very good to go on a table, to be used in gameplay. No issues at all with that. Yeah, I think they're striking enough. But yeah, did I manage to achieve that comic style? Let me know your thoughts, let me know your comments. I've certainly learnt a lot in this process, and yeah, looking forward to sponge chopping my next miniatures. If you've liked this video, then please like. If you want to encourage me to make more of this stuff, please hit subscribe, it really does. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and ta-ta for now.